Also for the team, if you see Nishit, just let me know, or just make him co-host.
Good to go. We are live on YouTube.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Biologically Speaking team and a warm welcome to Scimplify 2021. We are entering towards the last leg of our two-day virtual conference, and what a conference it has been so far. Aligning with the United Nations aim to celebrate World Science Day, we plan Scimplify 2021, featuring how science can be accessible to the public, to discussing science in vernacular language and science history. We plan career development sessions for postgraduate and graduate students as a part of Scimplify event. Just like yesterday, we witnessed a panel of talented PhD students from around the world discussing the life of grad school, and listening to them, it reminded me of my grad school days and said, wow, survived it. But what next? And with that aim in mind, we have a panel of talented postdoctoral fellows today in this panel who will share their journey and experience during postdoctoral training, funding possibilities, and experience in working in the lab, either in your home country or to move abroad for training. With that, let's open today's panel discussions. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Shobhanath, a postdoctoral fellow at the National Institutes of Health in the United States, and I'll be co-moderating this panel discussion with Dr. Shailaja Sitaraman from the University of Chicago. We are thankful to our panelists for taking the time from their busy schedule to participate in this panel, especially on a Sunday, when that's the only day we all get to relax a bit after a hectic week. I will ask all our panelists to introduce themselves, telling from where they did their PhD and their current postdoctoral fellowship and the institution, and one line on their current research. And I will go through all the panelists first. But to all our audience, this is your chance to get your questions, whatever questions you have in your mind, just drop them on the chat box and we will moderate them during the session. So have any questions you have in your mind, how to approach a lab, what fellowships you need, which country to go, what are the limitations for that particular country. I would also request our panelists to talk about their postdoctoral funding so the audience can have direct their specific questions to that particular fellowships if they want to. With that, I think Nishit is also joining. Hi, Nishit, can you hear me? Nishit, let me know if you can hear me and if you could please unmute and start your video.
Okay, perfect. Hi,
yeah,
Shobhanath.
perfect. Sorry, I just started it because we are just running out of time. We are just mostly starting with the first section of just the introduction. So we'll go around with the introduction first and then specific questions for the panels. Sure. So I'll go in alphabetical order. I'll start with Dr. Anindita Brahma, please. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anindita Brahma. I did my PhD from Indian Institute of Science from Center for Ecological Sciences. Then I was a postdoc at Queen Mary University of London, where I had a Marie Curie fellowship. I have recently finished that postdoc and have recently moved to the Rockefeller University for another postdoc where I'm funded by the NIH. To briefly state about what my research interests are, so very briefly, it's social evolution. I study the evolution of social behavior, specifically in social insects. And recently I have shifted to studying genomics and also doing a bit of bioinformatics regarding social evolution. And I'm thanks to Biologically Speaking for this amazing panel discussion, and I'm looking forward for a great brainstorming session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brahma. I'll move to Dr. Ipshita Jutsi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ipshita Jutsi. I did my PhD from University of California, San Diego. And then I moved here to New York, where I am right now, to do my postdoc at NYU around 2 years ago. I work on systems neuroscience. Specifically, I work with rodents to look at how they do compute spatial navigation and memory. And again, I'm really excited to speak to all of you today, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Juche. I'll move to Dr. Nishitshivastava.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nishit. I'm a HFSP fellow at Institut Curie in Paris. At the moment, I did my PhD from University of Cambridge, where I was a Dr. Manmohan Singh fellow. In terms of my research work, in Cambridge during my PhD, I was working on cell migration. So I'm quantitative cell biologist, biophysicist, and here as a HFSP fellow, we are developing a technique to measure single cell mass and volume. And I'm just trying to understand a simple question, which is rather not so simple, as to how cells measure their growth and determine their size. I thank Sonak and the team of Biologically Speaking for giving me a chance to talk to you all today. And I'm really keen to interact with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastava. I'll move to Dr. Nithya Namkishore.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nithya, and I'm currently a postdoc at Aix-Marseille University in Marseille in France. My PhD was from INSTEM in Bangalore in conjunction with Shastra University. And I'm a developmental biologist by training. The current project that I'm working on, which is funded by FRM, is focused on the earliest steps of heart development using the mouse and stem cells as our model system. I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Namkishore. I'll move to Dr. Ranjita Gopurapilli.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ranjita. I am a DBT India Alliance Wellcome Trust Early Career Fellow. I'm currently at National Center for Biological Sciences, and I'm a stem cell biologist. And my current project is to look at Parkinson's disease, some specific mutations associated with the Indian population, and I tried to model that using pluripotent stem cells. And I finished my PhD from Manipal University, where I worked on diabetes and pancreatic islet biology. So again, thank you so much for having me here and looking forward to a great discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Gopurapilli. I'll move to Dr. Santoshkumar Kancha.
Hi, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon according to the time zones. Thank you for the invitation, firstly for the biological speaking. I'm Santosh Kumar Kuncha. I've done my PhD from India, specifically from Hyderabad, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. My expertise in which I've done my PhD was structural biology and molecular cell biology. And now I am at in Germany, Frankfurt, Goethe University, at an institute called Buckman Molecular Life Sciences, BMLS Institute. I'm an EMBO fellow, long-term EMBO fellow for postdoc. I've recently started here. It's been 6 months, and my line of work earlier in my PhD, it was protein quality control, how mistakes during protein synthesis are taken care. And currently, I am more involved in protein quality control during autophagy and during autophagy receptors, how these receptors are kept intact and how the quality of these receptors has taken care. So it's mostly with respect to autophagy and E3 ligases. So that was the main line of research. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Kuncha. Sorry, thank you, Dr. Kuncha. And last but not the least, our final panelist of this session. And after that, Shailaja can take over it. We have Dr. Shobhanath Roy-Chaudhury.
Hello, everyone. So I am Dr. Shobhanath Roy-Chaudhury. I did my PhD from CSIR, Indian Institute of Chemical Biology. Basically, I changed basically I did my engineering. I'm basically an engineer with my grad in BTech, but then I shifted to basic science for my PhD, where I worked in molecular parasitology, where my main focus was to study some of the DNA topoisomerase targeted compounds to develop some anti-leishmanian, and I worked a bit on DNA repair pathways of the parasite Leishmania. And right now I'm working in University of Münster as a postdoctoral fellow. I initially moved here with a university funding, university postdoctoral fellowship, and recently I got this Humboldt fellowship. Right now, so topoisomerase was the bridge kind of thing, and now I have changed again my paradigm. I'm right now working in the field of single molecule FRET analysis to study the conformational dynamics of type 2 topoisomerases. And I thank very much Sundaram, Dushyant, and Sonak finally to giving me this opportunity to interact. So I very much look forward to this session, and I hope the session will be a nice one. Thanks the organizers again.
Thank you, Dr. Roy-Chaudhury.
All right. Thanks, Shobhanath, and thanks to all the panelists for being here. So let's just dive in with a few questions and thoughts that we have to discuss for this panel. So the first thing that we had in mind was what exactly motivated you to do a postdoc after a PhD, and how did you transition? What were the goals you had before this? And you all already mentioned the fellowships that you have, but could you maybe give us a short description, one line probably, on how you applied for these fellowships and what is the benefit of having this particular, because all of you do have very prestigious fellowships. So we would like to hear more about all of that. Maybe we can again go with Anindita and then, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll briefly talk about the Marie Curie Fellowship. So I had applied for Marie Curie back in 2018, and the advantage of Marie Curie Fellowship is it gives you you can work with it in Europe or UK, and it pays you well, and it has quite a bit of research funding. One thing I want to mention about Marie Curie Fellowship is the proposal is really long, and it takes time to write the proposal. So I would encourage everyone who is planning for a Marie Curie Fellowship to plan at least 6 months ahead. So generally the submission deadline is around September. So plan ahead and talk to your PI or whom you are targeting, and start planning for the fellowship. And also one other thing about the fellowship is there is a non-scientific part to it, which has innovation, transfer of knowledge, and it's also a substantial part, and it holds quite a bit of weightage. Generally what people do is they do not take care of the non-scientific part that much and only takes care of the scientific part, but I would strongly suggest that take care of both the parts equally. So that's something that I want to share.
Thanks. A follow-up question though. So do you also have a mobility thing with the Marie Curie? Do you have to have mobility for a postdoc fellowship?
What do you mean?
Because if you're in a certain country, I think you can't apply for a Marie Curie in that country, or
Yes.
That,
So
right?
Yeah. So Marie Curie has two types. I think if you are in a EU country, then you can apply for a global fellowship, and then you can move around inside EU, and also I think you can move to US with that fellowship. But for citizens who are not EU citizens, you can apply for individual fellowships and then move to a country like UK or EU with that. Yeah, but not multiple countries, it's one country.
Go to Dr. Nishitshivastava.
Yes. So I was funded by a fellowship called the Leon Levy Fellowship. I have to give a disclaimer that I applied for many private foundation fellowships before I got this one. And the situation in the US is really tricky if you're an international student, because most of the major foundations, the public fundings you aren't eligible to get any of that money. So you can only apply for private foundations, and most of these have success rates of about 2 or 3%. So it's really chance at that point. The one that I have, the Leon Levy Foundation, is marginally better because it's a private foundation, but they have basically funding for the 4 or 5 major schools in the New York area. So that includes NYU, Columbia, Mount Sinai, Rockefeller, Weill Cornell, and maybe I'm missing 1 or 2. But I think it's these 5, and they basically fund 4 or 5 people from each school every year. So obviously your chances are much higher. The only thing is it's specifically for neuroscience. So it depends also on your field a little bit. But otherwise it's a really good funding mechanism. The pay is good, and obviously your chances are much higher.
Yeah, I mean, the fellowships in the US can be quite competitive if you're internationals, especially.
Yeah, but if you have questions on the list of fellowships that we are eligible for, feel free to reach out to me and I can send you all the list.
That would be very helpful. Thank you. And then we have Yes.
Nishit.
Nishit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can talk to you about HFSP fellowship or also a bit of French fellowships, but mostly I think HFSP because a lot of people apply for that. What I think is an advantage of HFSP, which I felt over EMBO or Marie Curie, is that it's a 3-year fellowship. So it gives you a chance to, develop some project because we all need some time to start something from scratch. The other thing which HFSP looks for, which I saw, a lot of people who apply for this fellowship, is that they're really keen to see that you bring something to a new field from your own field of expertise. So I'll just give a brief example of myself. So I am a quantitative cell biologist, biophysicist. I was previously working on cell migration. So I got those tools. And now I'm using those quantitative tools to understand cell growth. So HFSP always looks for these kind of things where you are bringing some other techniques or tools from some other discipline and want to do something from scratch. And I think HFSP has 2 components. One is for the life sciences. So people who did their PhD in biology, and they are, of course, doing something in biology during their postdoc. And there is also a cross-disciplinary fellowship aspect as well, where people who did their PhD in physics or mathematics, they're also invited to do something in biology. So there are these 2 aspects. Of course, it pays you quite well. Especially in France, where the salary is a bit on the lower side. Shalja might be knowing a bit more about that as well. The other aspect is, of course, it's quite competitive. And one of the key things about HFSP is that you need to move the countries, and you need to move, you have to start your postdoc after 1st of April. So that's their clause. And why is that? Because normally I think now they have changed the format a bit. You have to do a pre-submission thing, and then they will invite you for a full submission. And this whole process takes about a year or so. So they only announce your result next March, end of Feb or March, and then you can activate your fellowship.
And so in addition to that, I think, would you also emphasize that a change in your research field is necessary? Because I think that's one of the criteria, right? You might have to change your direction of research or something.
I think, yeah, you might need to change your research field, but what I think is more than just changing the field itself. If you are able to show that you're bringing some tools from your PhD, even if it's the same field, still one can really show that. So I think one of the key things which the projects which they fund is really something where you have either merger of 2 fields or you are trying to make a new technique or something like that.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go to Nithya.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm funded by FRM, which is Fondation pour la Recherche Médicale, which is essentially the French medical research organization. The fellowship, like Nishit mentioned, is a 3-year fellowship, so it gives you some time. The additional advantage is that there is some support if you want to visit a collaborator's lab or if you want to attend conferences, etc. There's some additional support for that. Another advantage I feel is that this is France specific. So it's open to labs, the host labs in France. So I'm guessing as an international student, the competition is, you're more likely potentially to succeed in it, I guess, as compared to if you look at EMBO or Marie Curie, where you have people applying to labs all over Europe. It's as the name of the foundation suggests, of course, there has to be a aspect of your research that impacts clinical research because it's a medical research organization. So that is a component that is also judged in the application. And I think the only criteria is that the lab that you're applying for a postdoc cannot be the same, the host lab cannot be the same as your PhD lab. And another caveat, I think, is that if the PI already has FRM funding, you may not be eligible to apply for postdoc funding from FRM to join the same lab. So that's something I would encourage everybody to check out if they're interested in this fellowship, because FRM is one of the major funding organizations for labs in France. So, yeah.
And so apart
Nithya, just
from,
yeah, sorry, Shailaja, to cut you. Just a quick question for Nithya. So, for example, someone doing a PhD in France, does that limit them in not applying to this FRM fellowship, or they can still be eligible?
I think they're still eligible, but they can't apply to the same lab, apply for the fellowship to continue in the same lab that they did their PhD in.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And so could you maybe tell us a couple of other fellowships that may be there for other fields in France that, like, because I think a lot of us know like the EMBO and the HFSP, but like maybe just something more specific to the French.
To be honest, I'm not really sure, because I applied for EMBO, of course, and I applied for this one and I got lucky. So I didn't actually have to explore the fellowship landscape too much. So, but if I get any information, I will definitely pass it on.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Move to Ranjita.
Yeah, hi. So I am a DBT India Alliance Wellcome Trust Early Career Fellow, which means this is jointly funded by DBT, the Department of Biotechnology, and Wellcome Trust UK. So the postdoctoral fellowships in India, probably all of you know that is not great. And this is one of the very few which pays you decently, along with giving you a semi-independent position. You are also allowed to have as many collaborators as you can. I mean, probably as Nithya was also mentioning, even so at least now there is some importance to, let's say, translational aspect of your project. So at least my project did have that, but I did not immediately apply for this after my PhD. I joined as a DBT research associate. I did some preliminary work here in the same institute. And then we had a small paper, and with that, after when we were all very sure that, because it's quite competitive, and I took some time to apply for this. So basically, my first the first 3 years, I was a DBT research associate, and but then you also have to apply to this within 4 years of your defense. So the intermediate and the senior categories are for faculties, and for which you can apply later. But the early career fellowships, you have to apply within 4 years of your defense date. And another good thing is that you would be funded by them for a maximum of 2 years if you want to go to a collaborator in a different country, and your stay and your work there would be funded by the Wellcome Trust and DBT. So which, depending on what your project entails, you can take the whole 2 years, or you can even take a month or two.
So Ranjit, if I,
yes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I was just going to.
No, I was just thinking for Wellcome Trust DBT, because the window is so broad, like from a fresh PhD to like 4 years post PhD are eligible to apply.
Yes.
Can you comment whether it's good to apply when you're a fresh PhD and the selection bar is different than someone who has spent 4 years as a postdoc and then applying for the early career fellowship?
So it actually doesn't matter. At least in my case, I was working on a different project from what I did for my PhD. So I needed that initial few years to get my footing here and, sort of work around the project, see if it's actually doable and how much would I be able to do it myself. So I work with Professor Getty Hassan, and she's a fly biologist, but whereas I am a human stem cell biologist. So these are completely two different things. So I also needed to know if this is what I would be able to do, take up more ambitious high-risk projects. So I think I gave myself that few years, but there are people here and also other institutes who are fresh PhDs and got applied for this within the first 2 years. So if you are sure about what you want to do and if you're ready, I think it does not matter.
Okay, that's great. And also I'd like to request all the panelists, like if you have any comments on the questions that we receive in the chat box, please feel free to reply to them. And also the audience, please post your questions for the panelists to answer. Yeah, like so any questions that you have.
Sorry, Shobhanath. Yes, so there is one question where probably I can just comment on. There's a question here about good networking for postdocs.
Yeah, we were actually thinking of having that as a question for everyone. I think it's a very important question.
Sure. So we can do this later, or I can tell you.
Sure. So we can move to Santosh.
Hi. So as I've told earlier that I'm an EMBO fellowship. So the first criteria for is that you have to be moving between countries. That is not within EU, but you have to move from outside EU to within EU. But there are other models as well from EU to India as well. But it is very less explored. I don't know why. What is the reason why people don't apply for that? Because I have not heard anyone EMBO fellowship in India, but that provision is still there. But the main criteria is you have to move between labs, and you cannot do your postdoc within the PhD lab as mentioned earlier. That is a common criteria for most of the fellowships. And the good thing is here you can apply twice a year. So one deadline comes in February, the other one comes in August. So 2 times a year you can apply for the fellowship. There are 2 modes of this fellowship where you apply without a host institute, where you first secure the funding and then find a host institute. And the other mode is where you find a host institute and then take a support of the host lab and try to align your project theme according to the lab, such that mine is the second mode where I try to find a host institute, then spoke to the PI, put up a project together, then we applied it. So that was, I feel that the second mode is better than the first mode because you know exactly where you're going and you know which techniques you are available and all the things you are, so it is easier in that way. And when you are being analyzed for the interview, so there's a first round where you're shortlisted, the project proposal is shortlisted, and then you go for another second round where there's an interview with the PI where you have to present your whole work and as well as your future prospects. And they analyze mostly, are you going towards academia even further? What's your bigger aim? What's your bigger goal after postdoc? So these are the questions which are asked at the interview level, but not at the application level. But at the interview level, they will surely look at what is your big shot, what are you aiming for in the long run, not a short duration. And other good thing about EMBO is that before it used to be a fellowship where they used to give you a fellowship and you need to get your own insurance and everything done. But now they have shifted it, like they give the fellowship to the university and the university gives you an employment. It's like any other postdoc is getting an employment. So that is very secure because all the admin work is taken care by university. You just have to, and your insurance, your family maintenance, so you get some perks for all these things when you have an employment. So that way it is much easier when you have an employment than a fellowship. Of course, everything has its advantages and disadvantages, but I would say that it's good to have an employment rather than not having just working as a fellow. So that way it is good. And regarding the application process, it takes 6 months, so you need to plan very well ahead. So in my case, even though I have applied in February, I was in the lab in March, but the results were out only in June ending. So I could start my fellowship in August. So and you need to start your fellowship within 6 months of when you get it. And you cannot be here before 6 months, before the deadline. So you cannot start the fellowship. So you're not eligible if you're before the deadline of application. So these are the small constraints which are, but it is a pretty straightforward and a streamlined process where the EMBO itself responds very quickly for any queries. They're very supportive in these cases. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Santosh, if I can have a follow-up question on that to both Santosh and Nishit, because both of you mentioned that there is a 6 months thing by when you have to apply for this fellowship, either HFSP or EMBO. So do you think it's advisable to the fresh graduates to actually apply to both the fellowships because both are equally competitive?
Yes,
so
yes.
Do you recommend that?
Yeah. So for me, the idea was I'll apply for, so there are two. One is EMBO, where you have to, if you're arrived in Europe, you cannot arrive before the deadline. So you have to apply and then come here so that you can start within 6. So, but in the other case, I do not know the exact rule for the other fellowship, but for Marie Curie, you have 1 year time where you can apply within 1 year. So that was my whole thinking, that I'll apply first 3 months. In 4-5 months, I'll get to know about EMBO. If I fail here, I'll put up my proposal for Marie Curie. That was so always applying beforehand makes sense, and applying for multiple fellowships. There is no limitation. They will ask you whether you have applied for anything else, but they will also ask you, are you receiving any fellowship? If the answer is no, that you are considered equally. But they tell you at the bottom that if at all you have already secured a funding for something else, please mention us so that someone else will benefit out. It's fair enough that way.
Yeah, very well said. I think that planning is very important.
Yes.
So Can I add to the answer?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically, what I did was when I was finishing up my PhD itself, at that time, I was in the discussion with the PI of my current PI. And mostly what people do, what I saw with either my lab mates or friends, that they start to have this discussion because for me, at least, it takes a bit of time to develop a proposal, a good proposal, strong proposal. So it's always advisable, if possible, to apply in advance. And mostly people apply for at least people who are inside Europe or moving around to Europe for Marie Curie, HFSP, and EMBO. And there's, of course, I mean, there is no harm, and you just need to tweak your proposal a little bit, where you clearly show the significance, that part. So it's always good for EMBO. So what I did was I planned my arrival to join the lab exactly on 1st of April, just to satisfy the condition for HFSP. That way, it gave me a chance to apply for EMBO twice, because in EMBO, I think the rule is like 12 months, something like that. So it was the Feb deadline I applied before arriving in the lab, and then next time I could apply in October as well. HFSP only once one can apply, and Marie Curie, if one applies like in the September, October deadline, then again you can only apply once you have joined the lab. So that's the kind of timeline one needs to think about when he or she is joining the lab.
Right.
Right. And then we can just go to our last one.
Yeah,
Shobhanath.
Yeah, okay. So regarding, so since I started my work in Germany with a university fellowship initially, so there are a bit, I would say, the plus things at first for this university fellowship. This is basically an employment contract, and if you are in Germany, employment contract really helps you. Like, you do pay some tax, but you have some, like, lots of advantages. And the money in Germany university fellowships are really very much, I mean, it's quite competitive and you can save a lot. And now I will talk a bit about the Humboldt Fellowship. The first thing for the Humboldt Fellowship, there is no formal deadline. This is good in a way and bad in a way, definitely. So why bad? Because you do not have a defined time frame. So it's kind of, you can take, okay, when I am done, I can submit. But in a good way, it's like, since you do not have that timeline, so you can take your time fully and formulate a proposal and submit when you think it's fine. But definitely you should pay attention for drafting a very concrete proposal. So that was the best part of Humboldt, that you do not have a deadline. And second thing is, you have a kind of language grant here also. You have to separately apply for that if you wish. So definitely this language, I got the language fellowship as well, but I'm not availing it. I'm coming to the reason later. But the good thing for this is, it's always better if you have a skill for a different language. It gives you a competitive advantage once you plan to run your own lab or as an independent scientist. And Humboldt Foundation is very much flexible about, right? Like when I applied for this Humboldt, I was in India, and then when I got this fellowship, at that time I already started, since I got this university fellowship, so I joined the university. So Humboldt, so that is why I planned not to avail that, because if you are availing this fellowship grant, that 2 to 3 months you cannot work in lab as a postdoctoral fellow. You have to spend 3 separate months. So if you get the fellowship once you are in India, then you may plan to take this language course first for 2 or this is also kind of flexible thing. It's just 2 to 4 months. They give you a time frame that is at your discretion. So you may learn this language for 2 months, then start to work, but this can definitely give you a competitive advantage later on. Next one is, it's a very good thing with Humboldt. They give you an initial lump sum for your initial establishment. So you can avail that thing to, like, this is extra from your normal fellowship and other grants. So this is a very good thing, I would say, that you get some extra money to spend for your initial establishment. They also give you a top-up money in case you want. This is automatically given with your fellowship. So if you want to go to any conference, do some registration, do some kind of stationery purchasing, it's very easy. You do not need to talk to your PI for their lab grants. And another very important part is the Europe fellowship. There is another component of Humboldt. So there is a kind of, if you feel that although you do not need to mention, this is also a good thing, I would say, like when you are formulating the proposal, you do not need to write anything about this Europe fellowship in your grant. But if you feel that your research is going to a direction where you want to do some collaborations or some other techniques would be beneficial for you to reach your outcome, then you can again apply for this Europe fellowship, and they will consider, and if they think that really adds to what you are planning to, then they give you additional grant. So this is also a very interesting thing. And finally, that Humboldt Fellowship is also having a kind of subsidy grant later on. I am right now not very sure about the mechanism, but initially, like, they used to give all the Humboldt alumni a top-up grant once they are coming back to their home country. But unfortunately, right now, India and China have been excluded because they are considering us to be developed countries, so quote unquote. So the thing is, right now, they do not have the direct benefit sort of, but they have mentioned that they can favorably consider if any Humboldtian is getting an independent lab in their home country and plans to establish their own lab. So they will be favorably considering some of the application, like it's a kind of subsidy for purchasing any instrument. And the finally thing is, the Humboldt Fellowship is tax-free, so whatever you get, it's all yours. But yeah, in a way, since this is a fellowship, this is not an official employment contract. So definitely that has some pros and cons, but ultimately what you have, so if I directly compare money wise, my in-hand salary has increased, but the gross is decreasing because as I mentioned that university contract is a fellowship and you have other benefits as well. So if you are planning for a long-term stay abroad, then I would go for this university fellowship. But if it's a short-term plan, personally, I am not very much inclined to have a long career as a postdoctoral abroad. I want to have my own lab in India soon. So definitely for me, it's good to have more in-hand money. In that respect, also, Humboldt is a good choice than your university fellowship. But yeah, there are multiple questions. So I will be really happy to get more questions on Humboldt Fellowship.
No, can I just add something to what
sure.
So regarding if you want to stay for long term, for example, in UK. So right now, if you get a Marie Curie fellowship, so they provide a visa, which is called the Global Talent Visa, so which you can apply for at most like 5 years. So it's a tier 1 visa, which allows you to stay in the country even after your fellowship has ended, and you can stay in UK and look for other jobs. So you are just not kicked out of the country as your fellowship has ended. So this is one good thing about Marie Curie in UK right now. So just wanted to add that.
No, absolutely. So, thank you. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing to that? So for the Global Talent Visa, it's just not Marie Curie, it's for like all these competitive fellowships. They are giving this tier 1 visa over there.
Okay, right. No, great. Thank you. I mean, these discussions had really given a broad overview of the different fellowships that are available in different countries. So I'll go to a more specific question on like, how was it like in applying to the fellowship? Did your PhD universities have any specific courses or seminars or workshop that have helped you in framing your fellowship applications? And I'll take the question from the chat box that Rashmi has asked. Is it important to have good networking for postdoc applications? And I'll add to it is the role of publications and preprints in applying to this fellowship. How important is that? Like, I think majority of this fellowship, you really need a publication out of your PhD to be even eligible for applying, be it like later on getting selected or not. It's a lot of other factors to be involved, but anyone can pitch into this question.
Yeah, I would like to answer.
Sure.
So regarding this networking actually helps a lot because you get to know about the labs. So reading on internet does give you an overview, but you want to actually know how the labs work and how is the lab environment. So networking actually helps a lot. So for me, when I was in Linda Nobel Laureates meeting in 2018, from the lab where I am in right now, Ivan's lab, I came to know about the lab and also the lab environment. A few alumni of the lab, I met them. So that's how it helped me a lot. So networking does help a lot, especially in conferences, and wherever you get a chance, try to talk to them and try to know a bit of everything. So that does help a lot. And so networking is important. And coming to so what is the second question?
So the first question was if your PhD university have any specific courses or seminars and work.
Yeah, so here before coming here, I did not have any such things, but after talking to the PI, looking at the CV, and publication does matter undoubtedly. So they look at your publication, and the PIs generally have an overview. Okay, if looking at your CV, they'll tell you might get it. So that's how Ivan, my PI, has told me that there's a good chance that you might get it looking at your CV. So do not miss the chance to apply. And anyways, if you don't get it, I will fund you. That was the so basically you are given assured both ways. So you are free in mind to do what you want to do. So it does help a lot. And initially I did not have, but I remember in ISER Kolkata, I don't remember the PI name. There was one PI who was, I attended Indian Biophysical Society meeting. So there was someone who was briefing about all these fellowships one after the other. So even in India, whenever we are going to conferences, they keep briefing about these things. So someone was briefing about Humboldt Fellowship. So that's how I was reading about these fellowships and get to know. So networking as well as conferences, one other way they keep helping you, and publication does matter a lot.
Great, thanks, Santosh. Anyone else wants to?
Regarding
I
this
just
network.
want to add to, sorry, Shobhanath, go ahead.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So regarding this networking, so I would definitely say this is not definitely the determining step to get a postdoc, but it helps a lot because personally for me, I was really benefited because I got this university position just because of networking. I met with my current PI in one of the EMBO conferences in Switzerland. Actually, I had a small postdoctoral stay in India in my mother lab itself. Then I moved to, I attended a conference where I met my current postdoctoral guide, and she arranged this postdoctoral university funding for me. So definitely I would say this was very helpful for me to step in abroad with this funding, and that was just because of this networking thing. So really networking things help a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to also chip in and say that try to join the societies, specifically the societies of your interest, because sometimes they also advertise vacancies in different labs. So, and given that also, I would say that write to the PIs and don't shy away from writing to the PIs and say why you are interested in their lab and what your research interests are. And one thing that has helped me personally is to mention in that cover letter that I'm willing to write a fellowship or a grant with you. So that's something of interest for the PI. So do not shy away from writing a grant. So state that, okay, you are interested. Even if they don't have money right now, you are willing to write a grant with them. So that has helped me a lot.
Great.
Yeah.
So here I have one question as well, So do you, I had a feel that European PIs have a general tendency that they promote all the students, even if they are having their project funding, they generally promote incoming students to write own grants. So am I correct in understanding, or it's like if an applicant wishes, then only they encourage it?
What I came across, generally they promote. So even though they have lots of grants, they promote students to write their own grant and get their own fellowships. And they themselves decide it helps you to build your CV and helps you in long run. So it can kind of a confidence booster as well. So in general, they do help you to push you to applying it.
If I could just interject here. So about the publication question, I'd like to give a slightly different perspective to it. So my PhD, the last year and the defense, etc., sort of overlapped with the COVID period. So I did not get a chance to interact personally with as many potential PIs as I would have liked to while applying for my postdocs. So the publication aspect that I wanted to mention is if you're planning to continue in a similar or related field, apart from increasing your chances of success in a fellowship application, there is also this aspect that your future PI may know you through your work, and that might be a good bridge to start a conversation. That's what happened to me personally, though I had not had a chance to interact with my current supervisor before personally. She had seen the publication that came from my PhD work, and it was easier to start a conversation than if it was an absolutely cold email to somebody with no relation. So just wanted to add another advantage of having a publication from your.
Right. No, absolutely.
That's a great point.
What Nithya said that is, sorry, just one sec. That is, if you are planning on continuing in your field of interest or research interest that you had worked on during your PhD, of course, this is fine. But I would also like to say that if you want to change your field of interest a bit, don't shy away again. it is possible. And that's why these fellowships help you. Personally, I have changed my field of interest or research interest from what I did in my PhD, from what I did in my postdocs, and even what I'm doing in my second postdoc. So the fellowships does help you, and just plan ahead, talk to the PIs, and go for these fellowships.
Great. I think Ipshita has also commented on the chat box, but if you want to add something, and then Ranjita and Nishit, if you can.
No, I think
Yeah,
we
so-
covered most of the topics. So
Okay.
that more-
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more bit, if there is a time.
Yeah, sure.
That one of the things, because of COVID, now most of the meetings, talks, everything is online. So one of the ways to network is to be a bit more prominent on Twitter, either sharing your own work or engaging with the people, your own community, whatever it might be, by sharing other people's work and maybe commenting on that. And that way people at least will know your name, if nothing else. And I feel that networking is most important thing. Like, there is no two ways about it, whether it's postdoc today or when you start to apply for independent positions. People need to know you, and the science is not that you will sit in one corner and work alone. So you need to have collaborations, and for that you need to definitely network. So that's one aspect. The other aspect about the papers. So normally, at least when I was applying for the fellowships, with all these big fellowships, people always used to say that you need to have, big paper, Nature Cell Science, especially when you're in Europe. So that thing, it's true to an extent, but if your work is good, and even if it's not in a very high super journal, still people at least value your work. That's something which I have seen in different fellowships, different people. And I think one should not dissuade or feel bad or feel shy to apply, even if one or if the papers are not in these top CNS journals. Yeah.
No, I think that's very important. I mean, it's the quality of the work that matters rather than the impact of the journals. No, very well said. Ranjita, you want to add something?
Yeah. So I also wanted to say that this about networking. So the position in which I joined Getty's lab in NCBS, it was not even advertised. So the only way that I could, I got to know about it actually was through my network, and people suggested just go and talk to her. So that's what I did, because I wanted to be in India, and I didn't want a postdoc abroad. So I just, when I was in my final year of my PhD, I came in, I met her, and I told her that I work on stem cells, and I heard that you probably are interested in starting something that way. So would you consider me? And she was very open, and she said yes. And yes, publications do matter, but as Nishit was saying, I do not have very high impact factor publications. But again, the whole research, whatever I've done on stem cells in both pancreatic field or the neuroscience, has been from India. So PIs do consider the constraints that you have here, probably your funds or the institutes from where you do it, the infrastructure that you have. And so I was given 6 months to sort of prove that, because it was a completely fly lab, and that I could start something that way with human pluripotent stem cells. And that's how it started. And then once the trust was mutual, we took it ahead. I became a DBT research associate, and then with her and her collaborators help, I applied. As in, they sort of trained me and gave me a lot of mock sessions for the Wellcome Trust application for the prelim stage and also the final stage. So I think network is absolutely important. It actually gives you a lot of opportunities that you normally don't know about. And we also do some small outreach activities, which also helps, because people know you, as Nishit was saying, people at least know your name, know that you work on, maybe not the details of your work, but they at least know what you are. That really helps.
Yeah, I mean, just to stay with Ranjita for a quick moment, because our audience is majorly in India currently. Could you maybe elaborate a bit about your experience of doing a postdoc in India, and what students can look forward to in terms of institutes and fundings and things like that?
Sure. So if you want to stay back in India and do your postdoc, it's definitely doable. But yes, there are not many fellowships that are give you a decent pay, and very few allow you some freedom like this Wellcome Trust, along with having a good fellowship of your own.
But then to start with, you have multiple agencies like the DBT, DST, ICMR, all of them give you fellowships. There are also some private fundings. And most of the PIs here in NCBS otherwise have their own projects which provide for a postdoc fellowship too. So to start your fellowship, you can come in with any of these, and then you can apply for the more competitive ones. And for me personally, doing a postdoc in India, I have no regrets and I'm happy with what I've done. Yes, things are slower and the groundwork needs to be more. But in a place like NCBS, or where you have enough infrastructure, it's as good as, with human pluripotent stem cells. I did need a place which was like NCBS or ISERS or IITs where I could take it forward, and I have been happy. And I also have a lot of freedom. I get to take my own decisions most of the time, and I just that helps.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Just want to comment with respect to the freedom which you just mentioned. Fellowships does help a lot with respect to this.
Correct.
Once you have a fellowship, you're not bound by the deadlines of a project. So PIs are always under the pressure of delivering for the project, which they have written for.
Exactly.
But with coming to EMBO and all, they don't expect an annual report from you or something. So you are at ease and you're at freedom to do what you want to do. And with a proposal, if you'd want to realign your project without irrespective of what proposal you have written for the EMBO, you can still do that. There's a possibility of doing those things. So it gives lots of freedom with having a fellowship rather than working in a grant of the PI.
Yeah. So on a different front, if I may, so I also, on a personal front, I had a small child. So I wanted an institution where there were creche facilities, so which helped a lot. So maybe that's something which we don't think about, but that really helps you to do your work.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
That's good. Ranjit, if I can ask a more specific question regarding the early career fellowship.
Sure.
So I may be wrong, but I've seen many fellows who are like postdoctoral fellows working in an institute, and some are like independent, like a group leader position. So what does early career fellow actually means? Like, is it like it's a hybrid model? You can be either a postdoc in a lab, or you can actually take the fellowship to start your own lab. Or you can start as a postdoc and then you can transfer that fellowship to when you get an independent position.
So you can be any of it. So ideally, all of us probably would want a position and then have this fellowship of our own, right? But then the chances of that are very less. So what happens is most of us take it as postdoctoral researchers, and a lucky few probably get a position during that and transition to an independent PI, and you can carry your fellowship along with you wherever you go. Provided that the place that you go have the same, at least some infrastructure for you to carry out the work. So you can do any of it. I think it's pretty lenient that way, and you just need to inform them prior. And there are people who have come to India from abroad with the early career fellowship, and then they are faculties at ISERS or some other institutes. So any of it is possible. If you do get a job, you can always, or you can directly apply for the intermediate fellowship, which is the next stage to this, depending on where you are in your career trajectory.
Right.
Yeah, I have in continuation to that, doing a postdoc in India, I would make a sharing of my personal experience. Like, there are many people who they want to stay in India for a short stay, like short postdoctoral stay, and move abroad. For that particular thing, I would like what I did for my case as well. So I would strongly recommend. So if you can do it on your home lab, I mean, say for example, you are finishing your PhD and you have a plan to stay in India for 1 year or 1.5 years before you move abroad. Like, what I did was I wanted to finish some of my pending works of my PhD, and that's why I availed CSIR Research Associateship. So this is the only PhD postdoc fellowship that allows you to apply from your home institute. Like DBTRA, NBDF, they cannot allow you to work in your home institute. So I think it, like, those people who want to take a buffer for 1 and 1, because like I think it's a bit difficult to get, like, if you finish your PhD and immediately get a postdoc position, it's a kind of like, not all are very fortunate enough for this position. So if you want to have a buffer, a short buffer, you may consider applying the CSIR RA fellowship, because this allows you to apply from your home institute and you can definitely be productive. So if you are working in your own lab, it becomes easier for you to finish your all previous work than rather joining a new lab and to get adjusted. So people who want to be there as for a buffer for a short period, you may consider this CSIR RA fellowship to finish your all pending work, and maybe you can get a small publication out of it as well.
That's very informative. Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think on the interest of time, we have to wrap up this session because we have the next session lined up in a few minutes. But I totally apologize because it's 1 hour, it's not enough to discuss all these different aspects, but I hope we are able to give a glimpse of what it is to apply for fellowship, what do you expect in your postdoc. And to that end, biologically speaking, have been interviewing around 50 postdoctoral fellows who have been working in different parts of the world, including the panelists who have joined here. So we will be accumulating all this response as a resource booklet for the PhD students, and it will be available on our website very soon. So I hope those questions and answers from the postdoctoral fellows will help you to shape your career. And we wish all our young PhD students best wishes for your postdoctoral training. With that, thank you so much to all our panelists for taking the time and coming on Sunday and discussing this very important question that has, I mean, I have learned a lot being a postdoc and knowing about all these fellowships from different countries that are available. With that, thank you, Shailaja, as well for co-moderating this session with me. It has been a great session, and thanks to our audience. With that, I'll stop. I'll conclude this postdoc panel, and I'll hand over to Shreya to take over and moderate the next session. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.